Good morning, everyone. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another edition of the Monster's Den. It's been a few weeks, but we're back. As promised, I was going to start looking into tackling some 70s stuff, and specifically 70s slasher. Okay, and one of the granddaddies of them all. Kind of right here, you got the guy who probably started the whole kind of like horrific boogeymen, right? So you know, a long line of boogeymen in horror films. So you got, Freddy Krueger and Mike Myers and Jason Voorhees. Well, how about Leatherface? Okay, probably one of the first big bad guys who just likes to kill people and, pretty horrific and never dies. Never dies. So we're talking about Texas Chainsaw Massacre, of course, from 1974, a film directed by Tobe Hooper, who also directed films like Life Force and Poltergeist and Eaten Alive and Salem's Lot, the old Stephen King miniseries. So guy did a lot. Also did a remake of the Toolbox Murders. Long list of films that he worked on over his career. So he produced and directed this film based on a story by himself and Kim Henkel. Loosely based on events, factual historical things relating to the serial killer Ed Gein. Okay, so some of the deaths and the way that cannibalism and all that kind of stuff. So loosely based on that. Takes place in Texas. Okay, and spawned 7, count them, 7 sequels and prequels and things. Some of which vary in quality, but the best is always the first, which I actually probably saw for the first time back in, I'm going to say either 1978 or 79. It was when my family first got cable, and I saw this either on HBO or Cinemax late at night, being like 13 or 14 years old. I remember being like scared shitless from this movie. It's not almost it was scary, it was just creepy and shocking at the same time, because they really, they built this movie up, at least, if you went to see it in the theaters, if you're watching on DVD, to be like a true account of true crime, like actual events, almost like documentary style, which was, different for the time. Sure, they've kind of, used that quite a bit in recent years, but filmed on a budget of about $140,000. Not a lot of money. You can kind of tell. It's got this kind of gritty backyards quality to it, which I think works for this film. It did make $31 million at the box office, so one of the more successful horror films at the time. Tobe Hooper actually pushed really, really hard to get a PG rating for this film, which, I mean, if you've seen the film, there ain't no way that's going to happen, even though the film is not very bloody. Not overly graphic, but it's just very horrific in the kind of like suggestion. Most of the stuff that happens on camera is more suggestive. You don't see all the blood, you don't see all the gore. It's frightening, it's terrifying, yes, but it's not a gore fest by any means. But still, there was no way this movie was not getting an R from the Motion Picture Association of America, right? So, starring, well, first of all, you got some narration in the beginning of the film by a guy named John Larroquette, who at the time pretty much a nobody, but he also he later became a very, very famous actor. He also was a cast member of Night Court, very popular television series. He did the opening narration of the film, starring Marilyn Burns as Sally Hardesty. You got Paul Partain, who starred as Franklin Hardesty, her brother, her invalid brother, who's in a wheelchair the whole film. You got William Vale as Kirk. You got Terry McMinn as Pam, Alan Danziger as Jerry. Then you got Gunnar Hansen as Leatherface, John Dugan as Grandpa Sawyer. You got Edwin Neal as the hitchhiker, or the son of the family. We don't really know what his actual name is. He's a psycho. And then Jim Sydow as the proprietor, or the dad of the family. Right. So, like I said, they portray this film as kind of like real crime events. Even in the beginning, you get like these shocking photos with the creepy kind of sound effects and things like that. Here's the photos of all the bones and all that kind of stuff. So pretty chilling to start it off. And I do want to show here, I've got my DVD copy signed by Gunnar Hansen himself, who I met at Chiller Theater many, many years ago. Okay, I want to show that off. So it starts off, you got a bunch of friends, you got 2 couples, and of course Franklin, the brother, in the wheelchair, driving in a van through Texas. And they're basically Sally and Franklin's grandfather owned a small estate out in that section of Texas. Of course, been, you know, dilapidated and in ruins for many, many years, but they wanted to go and revisit the old homestead, right? So that their grandfather and father owned. So they're out trying to look for this old homestead. They don't have an exact address, but they kind of know the general area. So as they drive into this town, if you could even call it a town, they come across all these like strange locals, all who act very, very strange, you know, bizarrely. And, you know, you can tell it's kind of, this is like redneck backwoodsville, all sorts of weird characters, right? And they can't really get any sort of answer from anybody. But once they tell them that, you know, we are actually the descendants of the people who own this house, they kind of push them off in the direction of where they need to go. So, of course, they go to a gas station. Gas station has no gas. The only gas station around, it's all run down and run by this weird guy, the proprietor. He's actually, we'll be meeting him later. He talks about how they got great barbecue there and all that kind of stuff. They're not really interested. They want to, you know, get to the old house, and, you know, so they go on their way. They don't get anything from the gas station, obviously. As they're driving down the highway, they see a hitchhiker. And they're like, oh, you know, we should pick up the hitchhiker. It's really hot outside. It's out in the middle of nowhere. You know, we'll give him a ride. So they open up the van door. In comes the hitchhiker. And you can tell right off the bat he's a little bizarre. He's a little out there. He seems like mildly retarded, okay? But they start up a conversation with him. And he starts like talking about weird stuff, telling him he lives not far from there, whatever. And then he's got a camera. He takes out a camera and he takes a picture of Franklin, you know, and it's one of those old cameras, obviously, so it prints out the photo right there. And he opens it, he gives it to him. And Franklin's like, yeah, it's not a very good picture. And the hitchhiker's like, okay, $2, you got to pay me for that. And they're like, no, we don't want to pay you for that. And he's like, oh, okay. And they starts talking about how he used to work in the slaughterhouse, because it's the only thing, it's the only business around the whole area is the slaughterhouse. So he starts taking out pictures. He's got this little, like, kind of like man purse type of thing, little bag, and he starts showing these real creepy pictures of things that he's, you know, snapped in the slaughterhouse, and he's passing them around. People there, the rest of the folks in the car are looking at them. They're kind of a little disgusted, so they give him back the photos. Franklin doesn't want to pay him, obviously, for the photograph he took of him. So the guy is kind of upset, so he takes out this like little like piece of tin foil, puts the photograph on it, and he takes some kind of like little black granules, which of course is going to help him ignite a fire. Then he takes out a match and he lights the little pile with the photograph on fire in the car. Okay, which starts all this smoke and everything like that. Also, Franklin's got this little pocket knife that he's always playing around with. So the guy grabs the pocket knife and he cuts himself, you know, laughing. And they're like, look, this guy is out of his mind, right? So after he starts the fire, everybody's freaking out. They're like, you need to get out of here. You need to get out of here. He has his own knife. He goes and he slashes Franklin's arm, all laughing. He runs out the van. They close the door. They start driving away. He starts running up next to the van. He's, you know, punching the van, kicking the van, and he takes his hand, which is all full of blood because he cut himself, and he writes a little something on the side of the van, okay, in his own blood. Of course, we later know that was kind of like a message, right? It's basically he's like marking that van. We'll find out shortly. So now they leave him behind. They're like all freaked out. They're like, all right, we got to go find the old homestead. There's also a creek there. We can go swimming, such and such. So finally they get to the area where the homestead is. They go visit the homestead. It's this old broken down house, right? They go, it's kind of creepy, right out in the middle of nowhere, all overgrown with weeds and all that kind of stuff. They eventually find that where the old creek was, it's all dried up. There's going to be no swimming happening here. You know, they all get separated, kind of, right? So you got Franklin and his sister Sally, as well as Jerry, are together, and then you got Pam and Kirk, who, you know, those are the boyfriend and girlfriend. They go off searching around themselves. They kind of get separated, so those two find an old house and a barn, And outside the barn are like all these abandoned cars, like quite a few of them, with a generator. And there's a generator, and the generator's running. That's how they came upon it. They're like, I heard this noise, and there's this nice looking generator just like out in the middle of nowhere, all these abandoned cars around. And they're like, oh, this is interesting. So they walk around. They find the house. The house is actually pretty nice looking from the outside, surprisingly. So, Kirk goes up to the house. He's knocking on the door. Nobody answers. Door's wide open, right? So he walks in. He starts hearing these weird, like, kind of pig noises. So he walks in. There's like an entranceway. There's a stairs going upstairs, and there's a door straight ahead. He just kind of walks in. He keeps hearing this, wah, 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 pig noises. And he goes walking towards the door. All right. And then out of nowhere, he trips. Out of nowhere is this big guy with like a smock on, like someone who would work in like a butcher or something like that, and a mask on with crazy hair, and it's Leatherface. He bursts onto the screen. He's got this big, like, kind of like hammer thing, bludgeons him in the head, hits him again. Okay, you see poor Kirk twitching on the floor, right? Drags him into this room, and boom, closes this big metal door. Just like that. It happens. Just like that. And it's just like, it's a pretty shocking scene because it just happens so quickly and it's so brutal. But again, you don't see any blood, nothing like that, no gore. It's just like Leatherface is, boom, he's there. Kirk's like, oh shit, boom, boom, shake, pull in, close the door. That's it. And I remember the first time I saw this film, I was just kind of like, holy cow. It's like, what in the world is going on? So Pam, of course, who was outside during all this, is like, Kirk, where are you? Kirk, where are you? So she comes in, and there is like a side room. Once you first walk into the house, there's like a little side room, like kind of like a family room. And she walks into there, and on the floor is like all these like chicken feathers and, old bird feathers all over the floor. There's like chickens in little cages that are alive, right, up on shelves. There's like all sorts of bones and skulls all over the place, hanging up like decoratory type of thing. Really creepy. And she starts freaking out. She trips. She's in the feathers, and there's bones all over the floor. So, of course, she's like starts, screaming and getting all hysterical. It's just a really, really creepy scene. And the photography used is just unbelievably well done. Okay, all of a sudden, Leatherface appears again, right? Grabs her, picks her up, brings her through that same doorway, right? Brings her inside, of course, on the other side of the room, and this is actually kind of like an abattoir, this particular room. You see a big meat hook. He's running with her, whew, drops her right on the meat hook. Another horrifying scene. Horrifying scene. And then you can see there's a table right next to where she's hanging on the meat hook, and that's where poor Kirk is laying. So Leatherface goes, he grabs the chainsaw for the first time in the film, fires that up, and starts to carve up Kirk. Of course, they don't show it. You don't see the blood flying all over the place, but you do hear and see the chainsaw going. You see her screaming, hanging on the meat hook. She's obviously not long for this world, right? The violence and the gore is more implied than anything else. Okay, which is very different for this film as opposed to a lot of the movies that would come like in the decades to follow, where they would show all the gore and they'd use special effects to kind of show all that. Here it's just implied, and it's probably even more horrific because you know what's happening, you don't actually see it. So next up, Jerry winds up stumbling upon this place as well. So he's the next to go. He gets taken out with a mallet, like right at the front door. And it's like, boom, just whack right in the head. You're done. Okay, at this point, Leatherface is like, the bodies are piling up, and Leatherface is all worried. It's like, oh my God, what did I do? What did I do? Should I have killed all these people? Whatever, if that's what he's even thinking. Because we really don't know. I mean, again, most of the folks in this film act like they're just mentally challenged in a big time, right? So that leaves Sally and Franklin at the van waiting for everybody. And nighttime falls. They're out of gas. Okay, so they got the lights on. It's black as night. They're sitting up there waiting. They're calling, Jerry, Jerry, Jerry. By this time, this Franklin character, obviously, he's, like I said, he can't walk. He's in a wheelchair, but man, is he annoying. He's the most annoying guy in this film, and he's just complaining. He's worried. He's scared. He's like, we got to go find them. We got to go find them, or we got to stay here. She wants to go find them. So, you got Sally and him trying to figure out what to do. So they decide not the best decision. So him in the wheelchair, they decide she's gonna push him. The two of them are gonna go try and find Jerry. So they go off on these trails, which actually lead back to that house, right? So they're walking, it's pitch black, they got a flashlight, so they're walking on these trails in the woods and all that kind of stuff. She's pushing him, and all of a sudden Leatherface out of nowhere appears, fires up the chainsaw, and poor Franklin gets sliced and diced with the chainsaw. So Franklin is like, he's gone, right? So then here starts the scream fest. So I tell you something. What did I say her name was? The actress that is Marilyn Burns, who plays Sally, is one of the greatest scream queens of the 70s. I'm telling you. She, from this point on in the film, it's like in here we're at probably about like maybe the 50-minute mark or thereabouts. So she just like screams maniacally for the rest of the film. And so Leatherface is chasing her through the woods, all these thick brush and all that kind of stuff, and he's just sawing bushes and thorn bushes and all this kind of stuff, and she's just like running, screaming, whatever, clothes are getting ripped off. And, by the way, when I watched this film in, like I said, the late 70s, as a teenager, right, Marilyn Burns, the entire film in a tank top, no bra, running around, exactly. So, chasing her around. Finally, where does she wind up going, right? So it's minutes of Leatherface chasing her around with the chainsaw, her screaming, crashing into trees, all this kind of stuff. Finally, she sees a building, so she runs towards the building. Of course, what is the building? But the gas station, right? Let's go to the gas station. Someone will help me there. So she goes. She's pounding on. She goes to another house first. Nobody answers. Makes her way to the gas station. Of course, the guy, the proprietor, the owner of the gas station, is like, "Oh, what's up? What's up? What's up?" Lets her in. Locks the door. She's screaming, "Oh, you got to help me. There's some crazy guy out there. Oh, killed my brother. Blah blah blah. I don't know where my friends are. They must be dead." Blah blah. He's like, "Calm down, calm down, calm down." So he goes. He opens the door. Sees that nobody's coming. Right, and he's like, "Oh, everything's gonna be okay." Trying to cajole her, or whatever. He winds up, obviously he knows what's going on because he is not only in cahoots with them, he's part of the family. So he's the father, and the two sons are the hitchhiker and Leatherface, right? I got more cast of crazies at the house. So he ties her up. First he, hits her over the head. I missed the whole part here. So actually, she winds up, before she goes to the gas station, she finds the house. She goes to the house and she goes upstairs because she thinks it's a house, someone help me. She gets into the house, she goes upstairs, she walks upon this sitting room upstairs, and there you got decrepit, half-dead grandpa and dead grandma, both sitting in like rocker chairs in this empty room. All right, and she's like, what the hell's going on? And Leatherface comes up the stairs. Okay, he's got the chainsaw. She winds up jumping out a window. Okay, and the chase continues. She jumps out a window. She's hurt, but she keeps going. Clothes are tattered or whatever. Leatherface runs after her. So here she finally makes her way to the gas station. I will say, for a big guy, Leatherface moves pretty damn quick. He's like got lots of stamina. He's running all over creation, chasing this young thin girl, right? And he's just no issues at all. So makes her way to the gas station. Like I said, bad move, lady. And meets the proprietor. He tries to calm her down, but eventually, he goes out. He's like, "Oh, I'm going to go out and get some. I'm going to pull up the truck, and we'll go find help." Right? Yeah, right. So he goes out to the truck, comes back, and he's got rope. And she's like, "What are you doing? What are you doing?" She starts screaming again. So he takes like a broom and he starts hitting her in the head and all this kind of stuff. She eventually knocks her out and ties her up. Brings her back to the house. Okay. So he goes back to the house, of course. Then you see the whole family, right? So of course, then you find out he's the father. He owns the gas station, which has no gas. He's also got the barbecue thing going there. Now you kind of start to realize, all right, what's really going on here? The one son, the hitchhiker kid, he calls him the cook. All that sort of stuff. So they go back. It's dinner time, right? So they're like, "Go up and get your grandpa." So Leatherface and him go upstairs. They put grandpa in a chair. They bring him down the stairs. Originally you thought grandpa was probably dead, right? Because he's like a mummy almost upstairs. But actually he's still alive. And by this point, Leatherface is wearing like a lady's like kitchen dress, a kitchen apron. He's got a lady's wig on. He's got a different mask on. The mask, of course, is actual human skin, right? So they sit down at the dinner table. They're like, oh, we're going to have dinner. They got Grandpa there. You got the other three and her, and she's tied up. She's screaming and everything like that. She's got a plate of food in front of her. It's like, looks like bratwurst and some other assorted meats. Human flesh, right? Obviously. At one point, they're like, oh, Grandpa's got to eat too. So they go and they slice her finger, and then they put the finger in Grandpa's mouth, and Grandpa starts sucking the blood. Another kind of pretty horrific scene, right? So then, she's like she's screaming, let me go. And they're like, oh, they decide, it's your time to go now. So they're like, we'll make it quick. So we want Grandpa to do it. Grandpa was a great killer growing up. So they untie her and they bring her over to where Grandpa's sitting, and they put like the mallet in Grandpa's hand to go and hit her over the head to kill her. And Grandpa's like half dead anyway, so the mallet keeps falling out of his hand, and it's not working. So eventually she winds up breaking free and runs away from them. Just go show you what a bunch of idiots they all are, right? She somehow breaks free. She jumps out another window. She's the second window she's jumped out in this film, and she escapes out into the night. But wait a second, it's not night anymore. Now it's daytime. So this whole chain of events happened throughout the night. It doesn't seem like it would have been that long, because like the whole story seems like it took place in like 2 or 3 hours. But obviously, when she breaks out of the house for the second time, jumps out the window, it's daylight out, so it's got to be first thing in the morning. So somehow all this transpired throughout the evening. Okay, meanwhile they're eating dinner at like 4 o'clock in the morning, 5 o'clock in the morning. Kind of strange, but anyway. So she runs out of the house. Hitcher Boy is running after her, and he's like, he's laughing. He's like right behind her, like, he's like, throwing punches at her, whatever. Leatherface is not far behind. Okay, so they go out into the street, to the highway, because they're right off the highway, and there's a big Mack truck coming, and he's chasing her, trying to, get her down, and she winds up pulling away from Hitcher, pushes him into the road. He gets hit and run over by the Mack truck, which is a great scene. Okay, so he's done. So then Leatherface is chasing. So the trucker guy gets out of the, because Sally's screaming up a storm, help me. Half her clothes are torn off. She's got blood all over her and everything, right? So the trucker guy gets out. He's this big, big, it looks like a Spanish guy, and he gets out and he's trying to help her, and he sees Leatherface coming, with the chainsaw and the mask. He's like, oh shit, right? So he goes, they start running, but he grabs like this big wrench, and as Leatherface is chasing after him, he stops and he throws the wrench, and it hits Leatherface. Leatherface falls, and the chainsaw, which is still running, slices into his leg. So you hear Leatherface like scream for the first time. But does that stop him? Of course not. So of course he gets up. The trucker takes off. We don't know what happened to him. So Leatherface gets up, starts chasing after her still. He's limping. A pickup truck comes by. Pickup truck swerves off the road, right? Gets out. She gets into the car, into the truck, and the pickup truck. They take off. She's still screaming, whatever. They're looking back, whatever. And then in the end, the final scene is Leatherface, who's hurt. He's mad. He's enraged, and the chainsaw is still going. He's limping around, and he's just swinging that chainsaw left and right, left and right, pissed off. And boom, that's the end of the film. So she obviously gets away. Okay, forever scarred. We do know, based on the beginning of the film, they talk about how like some bodies were found and all this kind of stuff. So I'm assuming they sent the authorities there. But did the father and Leatherface take off somewhere? That's for the sequel, right? So it's funny because I watched this film. I've seen this movie like dozens of times, and I watched it again last night. And I tell you, it's like it doesn't lose its impact. It really doesn't. It's like, and the grainy nature of the photography. It's like, I watched this. This is the Pioneer Special Edition DVD. I know that they've re-released this on Blu-ray and all this kind of stuff. And I watched it last night on HD TV, and for the first time, I haven't seen it in a few years. And yeah, the quality of the video is not great. You almost like it's almost like this film you don't want to see it in like high definition. If that makes any sense. It's got to have that kind of like, documentary film style to it. But really, really well done. creepy as all hell, and very, very shocking for the time. Like I said, we would see on its heels, we would see other, movies like this, these backyard horror type stuff. I mean, The Hills Have Eyes, and, God, so many. I'm trying. There's another Wrong Turn. Wrong Turn's another film that came way later, but still has this kind of, this backwoods, inbred society type of thing, where lots of evil kind of things happening. But, and as far as like the boogeyman thing, like I explained earlier in the show, Mike Myers and Jason Voorhees and Freddy Krueger and all the ones that kind of came in its wake. I mean, this was the first like menacing slasher boogeyman character, which actually spawned an entire series of additional films. So I like Gunner's little Peter, you're next. Just looking at that. So anyway, there you have it. The Monster's Den for today is Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the original from 1974, starring Leatherface, right? Who would go on to star in many, many, many more. 7 sequels. So there you have it. Visit us on the web at www.seaoftranquility.org. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, of course, we're here on Mighty YouTube all the damn time. So hopefully coming up over the next couple weeks, we'll get another great horror film, whether it be something from the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, or 80s. We'll see. See what kind of, what is kind of driving my terrifying senses at the time, because I got lots to choose from. I got a ton of horror films. I love the genre, especially the classic stuff. So there you have it. So see you guys real soon. Take care. Bye-bye.